Okay, we live on YouTube.
We're live.
Awesome. Well, guys, welcome back to Decoding Babylon. I'm JT, my partner Brian over here, and we have a special guest. And I'm sure if you're with Understanding Conspiracy's YouTube channel and you're a subscriber, you know the guest is Paul, and we're totally honored to have you on here, Paul. Welcome to the show.
Thanks for having me, guys. Sorry about the technical difficulties. Let's maybe. I'm hoping it's better now. Hopefully, people in the chat will tell me everything's fine. I'm looking diligently now to make sure that this is clear. But like I said, I've never done many live shows where there isn't some technical hiccup, but I've never had a full crash where nothing works completely before, which is what just happened. But we made it. We're here. Thanks for having me. It's gonna.
Oh,
be
of course,
it's gonna be fun.
Of course, it's funny. I was saying before that, like, as Brian and I made Ancient Angels, a show that's, I mean, a movie that's about dedicated about the, like, kind of our history that's been untold about angels, Nephilim, demons. Like, inevitably, somebody was saying, like, you need to hook up with this guy Paul from Understanding Conspiracy, because he's got this very interesting take about clowns and Nephilim. And it's, at first, when I think I saw your videos popping up, because obviously that's kind of stuff I watch on YouTube, the algorithm says you're going to like this guy's videos. The idea that clowns and Nephilim could be some kind of connection. It sounded at first provocative to me until I watched one of your videos, and I was like, wait a minute, actually, this is not just some kind of outlandish take. It actually makes perfect sense. And so, Paul, the obvious question is, like, how did you make this connection? Because I haven't seen many other people talking about this.
Yeah, it is a weird one. I know what it sounds like. I really do know what it sounds like when you first hear the theory. Trust me, like as I explained before it crashed, I didn't think I'd end up talking about these type of things. It's just where my research led me, and it's just one of those snowballing connections that kept going one thing after another. I'll correct the record now. Even though the theory is called the Nephilim look like clowns, technically the truth is clowns are modeled after Nephilim. So there's a difference there. My wife is always telling me I'm a fraud. You need to change the title. You're lying to people, and I'm like, I've been doing this for 7 years. I can't change it now. It is what it is. I didn't know it'd end up like this 7 years ago when I started this thing, but here I am, and I'm not changing the name. It seems to work for people, so that's what I'm going to stick with. But yeah, so as I was explaining earlier before it crashed, I'll speed it up again, because if anyone wants to know the full in-depth story to all this and my whole testimony, go to my channel. Plenty of stuff on there explaining how I got to this. But I essentially came out of the New Age perspective, deeply immersed in occult knowledge, let's say, symbolism, practices, a heavy psychedelic user, looking for spiritualism. And in 2014, after a few years of conspiracy research and discovering the truth after the Mayan calendar of 2012 end of the world roped me in, I went down my rabbit hole thing and just it says can't, there you go. Sorry, a bit of a glitch on the screen there, but yeah, it says they couldn't get our video. I don't know if you saw that, but I think, are we good?
Yeah, it froze a little bit.
Are we good? Okay, right, there we go. Yeah, so like I said, I did my rabbit hole research, and I kept bumping into the Christian angle, the Christian explanation to explain why we have a conspiracy. And I didn't want to go there because I was heavily seeped in the idea that I'm my own God and I can find out all the truth from my own knowledge and save myself in that respect. But I couldn't keep ignoring this whole Christian perspective. It always led back to Jesus. No matter which rabbit hole I went down, it always came full circle back to whatever happened with this guy called Jesus is why you have a conspiracy today. So in 2014, I suppose, is when I was born again. I was kind of at the end of my wick. I had nothing left to give. I was heavily burnt out, seeking the truth through psychedelics and drugs. I was no direction in life. It was the end of my art degree. I didn't know where I was going, what I was going to do with my life, or what I even believed. I was a mess. I was just broken down at the end of my ability to just even continue with life. It felt like this is it. What's the point? The world's a mess. It's controlled by evil people. What can we do? We're insignificant. We're tiny. Clearly some evil forces ruling the world. All these type of thoughts are everywhere, and I got down on my knees basically, and I was like, God, if you're real, help me. That was as simple as that. Just asked for help.
Awesome.
at the
That's
bo-
all. Praise God.
you know, at the end of everything, and with nothing else to give, you know, and all the New Age Gnostic stuff left me with nothing but pain and misery and more questions. I didn't get any answers from that at all in the end. As much as it felt good to think I had all this wisdom and knowledge and power from it, it wasn't actually helping me, practically speaking, in my life. My life was a hell. It was terrible, you know, and I had no job, no money, no direction, nowhere to live. It was kind of just a bad situation. It said, if this is what the occult knowledge gets me, then what's the point? It's kind of what I got to. It's like this is not good. So I gave my life over to Jesus in about March 2014, just at the end of my degree, doing fine art, and I went down the biblical perspective, and everything was opened up to me from that day, and I started studying the Word more. Biblical history. I got into things about the Watchers and the Enoch and the Nephilim, and that kind of answered a lot of questions for me. Specifically, the question of the flood. You know, why would God allow such a thing? And I think it's something not many Christians who perhaps raised in the institution of churchianity would want to really look at. I think a lot of them consider it blasphemy as well. But I wasn't raised in that world, so for me it was easier to question narratives that perhaps were more dogma to Christians than they were to me, if you get what I mean. So looking into that, it explained a lot of questions. It was like, okay, so that's why God sent a flood. I get it now. I understand what he was truly like during that time. It was, you know, something needed to be done. It was a mercy. It wasn't cruelty. You know,
Right.
that time was awful. And so from my creative perspective, you know, and having this experience with psychedelics and spirit beings, I understood that, you know, so demons or spirits are the disembodied spirits of Nephilim. So I had that, and it's kind of like any interaction I've seen with people, my friends who did these psychedelics, including myself, what they would find were incredibly colourful, crazy looking things in these other places where the demons are supposed to be, you know. In this dry place, disembodied, as Jesus describes it, you know. And it never matched up for me with the images I would always see of Nephilim on most presentations during this time period, you know. People like Rob Skiba at the time were making a lot of presentations talking about the Nephilim, trying to square the history and understand it, and, you know, Gary Wayne as well. And it never sat right with me when I kept seeing these images of really tall, hench, huge pectoral, muscled, brown-haired, tanned, you know, barbarian-looking men. It's like that it just didn't sit right with me. It's like, it doesn't make sense, because everywhere I've researched, it's like the Watchers, even outside of the biblical perspective, are something akin to a fiery flying serpent or a feathered serpent or a rainbow serpent if you want to go to Australia. There were these serpentine class dragon-like gods at some point that mixed with humans and created human dragon offspring. And I was thinking of these, they wouldn't look human. Yes, it was always at the back of my mind. They wouldn't look human, you know. And like I said, I'm a creative person, so I was always sat with that. And while doing my research into everything occult and everything Christian and trying to make sense of these symbols and signs, 2016 came around, and there was this mass clown sighting happening that was panicking people, you know, and everyone was scared about sightings appearing of people dressed like clowns with knives stood at the edge of forests or in on street corners, just menacingly scaring people. And it wasn't so much the story about clowns that got my interest. It was the fact that every single news station across countries, from Europe all the way to America, was telling this same story. Now, if it was just a small isolated event in some particular city in America and the local news station did a story on it, this wouldn't be a thing. But it was all of them. It was everywhere. It was a mass clown sightings all across the country. And I couldn't help but feel, okay, so the media is controlled by, you know, let's just call them the Illuminati, just to summarize it very quickly. I know it's more complicated.
I'm there. I'm with you there.
Yeah, let's just say that. Okay, so if it's heavily controlled by occultists, they don't show you anything on that box in the corner of your room unless they want you to see it. There's a reason why they're showing this. It's a controlled, orchestrated show. Okay, so why are they showing us clowns? What does it mean that there are mass clown sightings everywhere?
Clownspiracy.
Yeah, what's going on? You know, what is going on? Mass clown
clown world, right?
Yeah. Then again, obviously after that event, the clown world meme did become a huge thing. Everyone was describing reality as like a circus. There's these clowns everywhere going against reality, and it truly became a clown world, like a mimetic thing in the mind of everybody, that the world we live in, the reality we live in, is filled with clowns in a truer sense. You know, the way they act like fools. But this event kickstarted a lot for me. It kind of pieced a lot of pieces together in my mind. Because prior to this event, I had been, like I said, I'd left my new age psychedelic taking life behind. I was sober by this point after 2014. I quit a lot of things, including cannabis and drinking and drugs, all that kind of stuff just gone, and I still had nicotine, but I've been nicotine free now for a year. I stopped last year. I went down to an electric cigarette.
Praise God.
It took a long time to get there, but being born again is literally I became a new person, and the things that I used to like I didn't like anymore. Now that was a problem for the demons who were probably loving to live through my body vicariously and experience those things. I don't think they were too happy about my newfound faith and the Holy Spirit kind of kicking them out. So I think I had a lot of attacks during that 2014 to 2016 period, which were demonic in nature, because it was kind of a, well, Paul, if we can't have you, nobody can type of attitude from these entities. And I had first-hand experience of them trying to kill me. I had one moment where I felt like my body went paralyzed, and darkness seeped in from the corners of the room, and I was dying. And it felt like something dark was trying to rip my soul out of me. He was trying to kill me, and I literally just said, Jesus, help me, is all I could do. And it stopped instantly, and I was back in the room. And things like this kept happening. They kept happening during this initial leaving that world behind and being born again period. And then I was attacked in a dream by a Hat Man entity, which is a very common
the Hat Man, yes.
And I didn't know anything about him till after I had the attack and did some research. And it turns out this is everywhere. This is everyone sees this thing who gets demonically attacked. Like, what is going on, So I had a dream about that, and he looked like a purple pimp of some kind with a cane and multicolored ribbons flying off behind him, like the Morris dancers or the Mummers or something. You know what I mean? He had this weird folky vibe to him, and then I had a random vision of literally looking up. I was in the DMT realm again, which I'd been to a few times before and I knew quite well, so I knew where I was. But this time there was an enormous jester in front of me, like a giant black and white fractaled, big purple grinned, giant glowing purple-eyed jester creature. And it was enormous, and I was like, okay, and then I was back. And I was like, I don't know what that was. These are all things I kind of just placed on a shelf in the back of my mind. What am I supposed to do with this information? I didn't know at the time, it didn't make any sense then. It was just, okay, Paul, I probably shouldn't talk about this because you'll look crazy.
Yeah, be careful who you tell. Be careful who you tell that story to.
Yeah, let's just leave that to one side for now. I'm sure I'll figure that out later, But I remember, during my DMT days, people always said they saw jesters when they did DMT. Jester-like entities would come up to them and start making fun of them and prodding and poking them and telling them to stop taking life too seriously, and just give in to the experience, and don't give in to astonishment, and showing them stuff. And I finally saw one. I got it. It's like, there they are. Okay. But I only saw it a couple of years after I quit all this stuff. So it's like they were revealing themselves to me after I quit. It was very strange because was
it in a dream?
No, this was just a random flash in the middle of the day for no reason whatsoever.
Oh, really?
Yeah,
because the drug stays in your spine. I've heard some of the drug kind of things.
I've heard plenty of,
and they'll happen.
Yeah, they call them flashbacks. So I put it down to that initially, but I found it strange that in all the years I was doing these things, I never saw anything like that. And then suddenly when I quit, it's like I could see them again. And while I've got the Holy Spirit in me, I felt more protected. Like, sure, I'm looking at this thing, but it can't do anything to me is what it felt like. It was just one of those moments where it's like, okay, again, I didn't know what to do with that. So when 2016 came around and these clown sightings happened, and then I had all this back research of the Nephilim would have looked like some hybrid mix between lizard creatures and humans, whatever that looks like, And it all kind of just clicked with the 2016 clown sightings, and I realized the clown is a symbol for something, and it seems demonic. And if demons are the disembodied spirits of the Nephilim, are they trying to? There's something here. I don't know what it is. People see jesters on DMT, and it all kind of came together, and I rolled with that point. Clowns and Nephilim. All right. Has anybody done anything about this concept before? And I looked into it, and no one has ever really made that connection. I think there was one channel called the Groxt one years ago. Someone brought it to my attention, and I remember watching him years ago. Like, we're talking like 2011 period here. And I think I remember people reminding me he drew clowns in Google Maps, and he said the streets have been laid out and there's clowns hidden in the streets everywhere out of the road marking. So I think that's as far as anyone's ever really gone with associating.
That's weird.
With a clown. It was weird, yeah. But at the time, that was a big channel, you know, and
Mhm.
I think that's the closest someone's made a connection that, okay, the clown and the demon must have some connection in some way, or the clown means something symbolic, because whoever built the streets has clearly put the clown into the streets everywhere, so there you go. But even then, I was always dubious about his drawings, and sometimes I thought he was stretching a little bit to make a clown out of them, and other things other than just clowns. So I guess there was that. And then somebody had also made a video kind of mocking conspiracy theorists. So it was a mock conspiracy theorist documentary, a mockumentary, you know, talking about the Nephilim concept. And he was having a laugh at our expense. He was making fun of us, you know. Anybody who believes in the Nephilim is a crazy conspiracy theorist type video. But he was like doing it in a History Channel style voice. And he was like, the Nephilim had white skin, red hair, and they were cannibalistic in nature. There's only one explanation. They were interdimensional killer clowns from outer space, you know, and then he...
Exactly.
You know?
Exactly. Finally somebody got it.
So he made this joke, and the video doesn't even reference clowns or anything in the title. It was really obscure. The fact, the chance of me finding this was very obscure, but I found it, and I was like, wait a minute. What did you just say? You know? And I rolled with it from there myself, and I realized, actually, here I am, you know, 7 years later. What I've discovered is that not only is the clown from its very inception in the West literally representations of the demonic, European and Indian demons specifically, but it was also fully designed by Freemasons from its very inception as well. And it is actually used as a symbol to represent the Nephilim specifically, as a tool to channel them as a costume. And the Nephilim did look like clowns. That's basically how.
Wow, that's interesting, because I think that there's so many, like, obviously things in the culture, and I don't know. It's like from the earliest time I can remember, people saying I'm afraid of clowns, and it's almost like, has anyone ever said I like clowns? I mean, because like that's like there's way more people say that I'm kind of creeped out by clowns without noting any connection to the demonic, especially Nephilim, and just saying clowns kind of freak me out a little bit. They're just a little bit strange. And it's like, I think so. Like, like I said, at first I thought it was a little provocative, but then I was just like, but you know, like, why? Like, in the movies, clowns are presented as evil way more than they're presented as funny characters. They're almost always presented as dark and weird and sinister. And obviously you can say, you just look around just pop culture, it's just like, that's how they're represented. So I mean, it makes more sense than you realize.
Yeah, well, coulrophobia, which is the fear of clowns, is actually, it's up there. It's surprisingly up there on the list of top 10 fears, and it's kind of like, it's so bizarre, isn't it? It's like, because you got spiders, you got snakes, you got heights, the big three, you know, just generally people just have a aversion.
Right.
And you could argue, well, that's a predator response to snakes and spiders. If you know, I'm not promoting evolution here, but they would argue, you know, we used to be hunted by these things, therefore we have an inbuilt fear of them because of the, you know, we used to live in forests which had snakes and spiders killing us. But if you can go that far to explain that, if you want to go that way, but why clowns? Why would you be scared of a clown? And it's funny because every like year or 2 years, you can search them up. There's been an article released every year or so by some newspaper somewhere to talk about the fear of clowns. They always bring it up every year, and they always say the same thing. It's kind of like they're trying to get people to believe why you're scared of clowns is it's because of the uncanny valley. It's almost human but not quite, and it scares people. Masks scare people because you can't read their emotion, and we naturally as humans need to read people's emotions. It's an evolutionary thing. So and when we don't trust people who wear masks, so naturally it's a fear. But I'm starting to think that's kind of the cover story. I think it's more the predator response thing, like the other ones. Because if the clowns are a caricature of what the Nephilim would have looked like, because that's what it truly is. I'm not saying I think people really need to get this, because I've heard, some of my critics would say that of course the Nephilim did look like clowns. I don't mean they went around with big red wigs and big red bulbous honk noses with horns going honk honk on unicycles like that. That's That's a joke, parodied, caricatured image of what the Nephilim truly did look like. Okay,
Mhm.
the clown is meant to look silly to us today. That's how we're supposed to interpret it. It's a mirror, you know. And I think the real fear comes from they used to hunt us, they used to eat us, we were prey to them, and it's just ingrained deeply into us, our collective psyche of humanity, to when you see something that looks like that, you run, or you stay still, you panic, you have a prey response to a predator like this. Giants, what are you supposed to do when you see a giant with a huge big red serpentine smiling grinning sharp-toothed mouth, giant glowing eyes staring down at you with this wild crazy blood red hair? What are you going to do? You're looking up at this enormous like 15-foot monster in front of you that clearly wants to eat you. It's kind of I don't think you're going to forget that very quickly. I think humanity has remembered. So yeah.
What's
I
interesting?
think it's,
Oh no, good, Brian.
I don't know if you know this. I don't know if you should follow my channel or anything yet, but but I have a video that I talk about Tengu in Japanese.
Yeah.
What Tengu is? Have you seen my channel or anything like that?
I've not seen the
thing
channel,
that I
but
have on Tengu.
I know Tengu is a half bird, half demon type creature with a big long red nose and like griffin style feet. Yeah.
Exactly. Okay, so here's the thing. He's also a caricature of what a Jew was. And people don't know this, but and like I broke it down on a video and it's very fascinating. But the Jews were known for the nose, right? And so Tengu has this big long nose, right? And then it's also he's depicted as being red. And it's red because he was a white man. It was a white Jew of some kind. And it was Tenju. It's not Tengu, it's Tenju. And 10 is their word for heaven, and it comes from heaven. Okay, so it was the heavenly Jew, and Tengu brought the Torah no Maki, which is the Nomaki is the scroll of, and Torah, the Torah no Maki. Tengu brought the Torah. Look, I don't know how boldly, and this is my theory I put out there, and it's blown up all over the internet too with this, but like literally you see this replication and this exaggeration of Tengu turning from the Tengu has this little black box that he wears on his head. And I don't know if you've seen the Teflon that the Jews wear, this little black box on their head, which contains the scrolls that they put in there when they're trying to memorize it. Like Tengu is a caricature of what originally a Jew was, a Jew that brought the Torah to the Japanese people. That's what Tengu is. And but people are like, no, that's not Tengu. He's got wings, dude. The wings are a caricature representation of the fact that Tengu supposedly came from heaven. Who's in heaven? Birds. They fly in the air, so they gave him wings. It doesn't mean that Tengu had wings. It just is a caricature representation. And then the red skin and the red nose oftentimes is a character representation, just like in Tengu, of people that were white. So white people, light-skinned people, were depicted as having red noses, also because they were also oftentimes drunk because they would drink alcohol, and so there's like this red nose effect that you'd get. And so this is like a depiction that I think reflects into the clown aesthetic as well in some degree, because they were probably like drunk all the time. They're drunk, bumbling, demonic entity Nephilim that would just go around eating people.
Well,
And so
on the red nose situation. So first of all, Tengu being that's the first time I've heard that theory. Interesting. Yeah,
I've got a thing on it.
Yeah, I'll look into that. There's a lot of connections. There's clearly a lot of symbolic connections there. In terms of caricaturing things, this is what humans naturally do. We seem to have a way. We're artistic by nature. I think that's naturally what we do. And I think in Japan, I think the Oni is actually the most closest thing to a Nephilim that we can actually get in terms of a representation of what the Nephilim specifically would have been like. And the Oni demon with the wide smile, the buck teeth sticking up and down either way, the wild-eyed look to it, that's actually extremely similar to the masks worn of the dragon masks in China. And the Hindu Rakshasa demons as well. It's identical to them. It's also identical to the Greek Gorgon Medusa, which was a half-human, half-reptile hybrid, birthed out of a female monster hybrid and a sea god, so a fallen angel with a siren. And it says in the book of Enoch that the women who mated with the fallen angels became sirens. So it's the same story told over every continent. The Rakshasas were giants, man-eating giants that subjugated mankind and turned them and became the slave class, and they ruled over them as kings.
They were also guards. of them. Yeah.
I think the Asuras were considered gods, and then the Rakshasas were the negative
okay.
aspects. But I think it's just two sides of the same demonic coin, the good and the bad. It's,
Mhm.
that duality play is just a lie. I think they use that to control
Mhm.
people. In fact, the good cop, bad cop
Mhm.
dichotomy, I think is a bit
Right.
of a demonic play. Good or bad cop demons are still demons at the end of the day. They're still an abomination in the eyes of the Lord, so it doesn't matter, But I think they played a lot of games with people during that antediluvian time to keep themselves in power. But yeah, the Asuras look identical to the Rakshasas. If you actually look at them, there's there's no difference to them. They just put the Asuras as guardians on their temples, and the Rakshasas are the demons they were supposed to be
Mhm.
fighting against. But they look the same. They look like monstrous, big,
They all
white,
look the
grinning,
same, yeah.
monstrous, like serpent-human hybrids. Now, this is what we're dealing with when we're talking about the Nephilim. And a lot of my work is an anthropological study of all of these cultures all around the earth, and I'm threading together the similar vein they all have when representing their version of a demon. And you realize they have the same traits, the same they have their own aesthetical way of artistically depicting it, their own cultural stylization, but they're all fundamentally describing and depicting through their caricatures the same creatures. And you'll find clownish features often repeat over and over again. Pale white skin, some kind of red nose motif or multicolored patterns all over the face, whether it be polka dots or triangles or something. Some kind of headdress, which makes the hair look red, whether it's feathers, red straw, or even a golden headdress full of jewels of some kind, giving that radiating halo effect. They usually have makeup on their face to make their eyes look much larger. And they often give themselves a big wide grin as well, whether that's in makeup or in masks or whatever they use to venerate or dress like. The clownish features appear, and the clothes are always colourful, psychedelic, with ribbons or rags or something, or some kind of bejeweled effect, a lot like a clown costume. You'll find people have been dressing like the demons for as long as oral traditions have and rituals have existed, and it's because what they're doing is they're trying to channel the ancestor spirits, as they call them. So
Right.
they consider them the builders of their ancient civilization. So they're not talking about grandma or granddad or your uncles when they say ancestors. They're talking about
And 100%.
the old ancient gods who created their civilization, who they still venerate, the Nephilim. The Nephilim put
Yeah,
themselves
exactly. Because
yeah.
because I think we try to explain that to people too. It's like ghosts are real, but they're not the ghosts of your grandma.
No.
Like the spirits that are here are unclean spirits. They're
Absolutely.
spirits of the Nephilim. And I was wondering I'd wondered if you have seen this before. So obviously you started doing this before, obviously most people talking about this, or, I don't know, as far as connections on YouTube and any of the people who are seeking the truth. But it was interesting. So I was going back down the rabbit hole, and somebody saying, "Hey, have you ever seen that show Supernatural?" And it's like, gosh, it's probably like 20 seasons. I don't know how long it's been on the air, but I was watching an episode, and I think it was right around the time people were telling me to connect with you. There's an episode called Season 2, and this is like Season 2, Episode 2, and it came out in 2006, and it was called Everyone Loves a Clown.
Yeah.
And literally in this show, they do expose a little bit of truth in there. I think they put it in there. They literally say this clown that people are seeing, it's obviously a murderous clown, is a Rakshasa or a Rakshasa. How do you say it?
Yeah.
Have you seen that episode?
Well, funnily enough, I
of course I said I knew you had to.
it's funny you mentioned this. So I started my series in 2016. I started with very little knowledge on clowns. I wasn't a clown guy. I've never cared about them, and I've never watched Supernatural. So I never got this information from anything prior. But one of my recent episodes in my Nephilim Look Like Clown series is episode 42. So I'm quite deep into this, I've been doing it for a long time. 42,
yeah, that's what I was saying.
And 42 episodes in, and I released this episode where I examine the Rakshasa demon of all the Hindu-inspired countries of the the Austro-Asian area, and that covers a lot of places: Sri Lanka, India, Thailand, going across to the Philippines, Bali, Papua New Guinea. There's a lot of islands. It's a big archipelago, but they've all been influenced by the same ideology, Hinduism, and they all have their own depictions of a Rakshasa demon. So I did a whole episode on that and showing how, if you look at the features of a Rakshasa demon, you'll realize that they're identical to the Greek depictions of their own versions of demons, or the wild man depictions up here, or Japan, the Oni, and China. And you'll find, the commonality, the thread going across a lot of cultures. And after I made that episode, somebody said what you just said to me. Have you actually seen this episode of Supernatural?
It might have been you. It might have been me. I remember in the comments, because I was like, "Did you see that?" Because I literally just watched that, and I was like, well, I guess it was confirmation I need to have on the show. I was like, that's weird.
Yeah. So
because obviously it's like some people might say, like, as they say to me all the time, you're reaching, bro. And it's like, obviously they just straight up showed it in this show. Like, this is a clown. Actually, it's not really a clown. It looks like a clown. It's actually a Rakshasa. It's this Hindu demon.
Yeah, specifically. And that's the thing, because I weaved my theory into the history of the clown costume in the West, and where do we get it from, and what's it modeled after exactly. And that's a whole huge long conversation in its own right, that history. But basically, to summarize that quickly and why this is relevant to the Rakshasa, there was a time in the 1800s where there was a big shake-up in the industry of theatre, and the British theatre specifically. And a son of a very prominent, famous Freemason called Charles Dibdin, his son, who is also called Charles Dibdin to complicate matters, but that's what they did then. So Charles Dibdin Sr., who was a famous Freemasonic songwriter, very famous for making music, okay, and writing plays, big rock star of the time, and what he was a part of the craft, the Freemason Brotherhood, So I reckon his son was probably the same, to be honest, because in true nepotistic fashion, his son got to take over one of the prominent theatres of London at that time. So, my dad's famous, you better let me run the theatre type of situation. And as soon as he got in there, he did a shake-up, and he changed the costume of a clown. Now, the costume of a clown hasn't changed in like 300 years since its inception in like the mid-1500s, okay? It's always been a boring, white, plain, ragged just servant garb. Just white, yeah. There was no reason to change the costume of a clown that we could see. His argument was, I want to make my mark on the industry, so I'm going to change the look of the clown, But then you look at what he changed it into, and it's the most monstrous-looking, psychedelic, freakish thing you've ever seen in your entire life, And it's kind of like, how did you get from plain, boring, white servant garbs to this? Like, that's a leap, by any standard, and you look into it and you realize, well, actually, Charles Dibdin Sr., his father, he had a brother called Thomas, who was a member of the East India Company, who was colonizing India, the British Navy at that time. And Charles Dibdin himself traveled back and forth to India a lot. He was even going to live there, but he decided to not. He changed his mind when the ship couldn't set sail because of bad weather, and he decided to stay in England. So they loved India. The Dibdins loved that country, and I reckon they took their inspiration from the demonic symbolism on the temples, specifically the Asuras and the Rakshasas of the Thai temples, and another one called a Kalasungsang Rakshasa demon, which means upside down demon, with the same face, but I reckon they saw this iconography and brought it back to England and decided, I'm going to dress the clown like a Rakshasa demon. And you can actually find examples where they've done drawings of Joseph Grimaldi, the actor of the day who donned the first costume, in this upside down position on his hands, with his legs in the air, with his head bent up facing you. And that's identical to how the Rakshasa Kalasungsang is depicted in Bali. It's identical, and it's kind of, you clearly see where they got their inspiration from. They have just modeled the entire costume and makeup after a demon in India. Specifically, like, bang on, that's where they got it from. There's not a shadow of a doubt. You can see it clear as day once you put the two next to each other. Yeah, that's what. But no history book mentions that anywhere. They've just glossed over that fact. They don't bring it up. They don't talk about it. What you'll find is a lot of talk about how smart Joseph Grimaldi was, the actor who created the first costume of a clown. He had nothing to do with it. He was a Freemason.
Right.
But
let me ask you a question. So as you were saying, when you were doing, experimenting with drugs, and you were seeing like these jester type characters, I remember before I ever, started doing it, going down the rabbit hole, I was listening to Joe Rogan. He had guys like Graham Hancock on, and they were talking about DMT.
Yeah.
And they were specifically talking about going down there, doing ayahuasca in the Amazon, working with shaman, and all these people experiencing these obviously these trips where they're seeing entities. Joe Rogan talks about smoking DMT, seeing jesters. And is there any kind of an equivalent? Yeah, what's interesting is like, so ayahuasca is the vine of the dead. Okay, so you're going in with this medicine man. It's like, okay, so obviously they're attempting to contact ancestors. And then they just so happen to start seeing like serpent type beings, jesters,
like
clowns.
Looking beings with snakes all over there coming out of their head and everything.
Yeah.
Is it possible that the Diptons, when they were in India, in India is, I know that you think about like the Beatles going over to the Far East and coming back with all this kind of like hippy dippy stuff, the yoga, and then all of the stuff that's inspired like the 60s. Is there a DMT equivalent like that, or I mean like whatever they use over in India to have their, the religious ceremonies when they probably venerate the Rakshasa and all the weird stuff they do?
They primarily wear costumes to be specifically possessed by demons. That's how they open their channels. They do rituals where they dress like the demons, like the ancestors. And this is the point. Like, you don't need drugs to be possessed by a demon. All you need to do is dress like one.
That's true.
That's the secret. That's the secret they don't want anyone to know, in fact. That's the secret that gets used by all the music industry, in fact. If you dress like a psychedelic clown monster and white up your skin and red up your lips, you will be elevated through the industry. You will be. If not by the demon within you giving you skills you don't prior have, the people that run the industry will notice you and put you on a pedestal for others to emulate and copy. Because the more people they can get dressing that way, the more channels they open up. And that's why these.
Is that a Lady Gaga situation where she's, like when Lady Gaga first hits the scene, besides the fact that she likely stole some other pop star's identity, that was what she was known for at the beginning, was that she was dressing up in the most outlandish stuff. And it's interesting how like you have like the Doja Cats wearing all of the gems and, they like dressing these people in like the most ridiculous ways. You think models and stuff like runway models, it's like, what, like obviously they do stuff that no one would actually wear. And is it has something to do with that?
Part of the embodiment.
It's the same thing. It's the same practice all these ancestor spirit cultures do. In India, for example, you have something called the Theyyam. Now, the Theyyam is a very old practice. It's probably predates Hinduism itself, actually. And they still do it in this one specific region of India. And they basically have one person of the village who's the shaman. They don't call him a shaman, but that's their version of a shaman by any standards. And he would basically dress in this orange-skinned black makeup with serpentine black slit makeup eyes, adorn him in like a demon mask with like fangs and everything. He had this huge aura around him. He wears this very elaborate dress. And even when he does this, he has to go through a ritual while being painted by specific people. It's all very ritualized and ceremonial, from start to finish. Then he comes out to the public, and then the people have to give him offerings like chickens, live chickens. And if they do, he has to eat it. He has to bite the head off the chicken because he is the embodiment of the demon. They are feeding the demon who now has embodied this particular god, this person who is dressed like the god. And then he channels the demon and they ask it questions like, how can I solve this family conflict? What do I need to do to solve this financial issue? And that's what the ritual's for, to gain insight and power and knowledge from the channel, the individual dressed like the demon who is now channeling it. And you can look into it. That's called the Theyyam in India. And there's another one very similar just across the way, which has a slightly different name and a slightly different aesthetic, but they do the same thing. They dress that way and they get possessed. That's the trick.
So the fame, like fame, like famous people.
No, THEYYUM. So they.
Like Thames, like the Thames River.
Yeah, kind. Yeah. They. Like pronouns. They, them.
Oh, so like they, them. That's even more. That's even more fascinating and funny because.
Yeah.
Oh my gosh, I have so much to say about that. I wanted to mention something to you actually because I find this very very interesting when it comes to acting. In Cambodia, there's a word for magic. It's sel, okay? And I don't know if you know that the word for magic, and that refers to like witchcraft and occultism. And then selaba is in Cambodian. It's their same word for sel is their word for art and dance and acting. It's the same root word for art, dance, and acting is derived from magic. They call it magic. And so they literally will call dance And because they know that those moves where they move their hands and they do those dancing, and that's where the things that look similar to the Rakshasa, like the giants that were in Cambodia as well, and they're giant clowns. That's literally what they are. And like they embody these things with their dance, and they're doing what they call magic. It's the embodiment of the acting of that takes on that persona. And I think it's very fascinating because I was just in LA, and I went by a place that I used to, before I was like a Christian, I'd gone there a lot, and it was like this improv studio, and I just went by to check it out and be like, see what it's like over there, just kind of see around. I was with a friend, and when we went there, they were doing a class, and the class was called Clown. It's a new type of improv called Clown that is going on all over the place right now, apparently. And what it is, and I watched this and I watched the whole thing because I was kind of in shock a little bit when I walked into this, and I'm like, what's going on? Oh, it's Clown. And I'm like, Clown? I was like, this is strange. And so I watched they're doing their improv, and literally it's like a improv group, but it's almost like embodying. They constantly talk about embodying the identity of the silliness or whatever, or try to feel the entity coming into you, the clown coming into you. And I'm like listening to this woman saying, like, giving instructions to all these group of people, and I'm just like kind of shockingly watching this, like people being possessed. And I'm like thinking that because I cast demons out, bro. I like pray demons off of people. And so like this is like what I do. And so when I'm seeing this, I'm just like, these people are getting possessed right in front of my face. I'm like watching them do this ritual, and I'm like, this is shocking. And people think that this is funny and normal, and they're like laughing. And towards the end of the thing, they're doing like this improv acting, and someone walks in with a baby, bro. Someone walks in with a baby, and the people on the stage that are doing their improv go, baby, baby. And the other one goes, eat, baby. And they start acting out eating a baby. Like, I'm not even joking. I'm watching this, like, and everybody's laughing in the audience, and I'm like, you guys have no freaking clue what you guys are laughing at. Like, you guys think that's funny? Like, you have no clue that the people on stage are literally channeling a demon, and it's mocking you about how it wants to eat your children. Is
that possibly like that Kundalini spirit that they always talk about? Because even people like the counterfeit gifts of the Holy Spirit. You go into these crazy churches, and people are getting slain in the spirit, and they're laughing like ridiculously. Like, obviously, the Holy Spirit's not a spirit of confusion or nonsense. And like they're just writhing around the garden, like laughing at stuff. Is that because obviously you think like the Hindu stuff, the Kundalini spirit? Is that, you think there's a connection there?
I can totally give you an experience on that one because I do this. I don't know if you've ever dealt with casting out demons and stuff, but I'm sure this will be interesting. But like when I go to pray for people and we cast out demons, there is a very common thing that happens. The people will laugh. Certain people with certain demons, I'll be praying and they'll be like, and I'm like, whoa! Like the first time it started happening to me, I was like, they're like, I'm so sorry, I don't know why I did that. And I'll just be like, all right, in the name of Jesus, whatever's holding them down, I'd be like, come out now. And they'll be like, and they'll like wicked laugh. And you're like, what the heck is this? And then there's some churches that will, like, I've gone where there's people that are like laughing when the Spirit of God's moving. They're laughing. And I was like, at first kind of thrown off. I was like, dude, this is really weird. Like, why are these people laughing? And I recognized that it was demonic laughter. And it was almost like the demon was like laughing that they weren't getting caught or found out, that they were in the presence of the Holy Spirit, and they weren't being cast out. And the demon was like mocking everyone in the crowd, like laughing through the person. And they're like, oh, it's holy laughter. There is holy laughter. Actually, there is some situations where it is holy laughter, but most of the time it's demonic laughter. I've noticed, like, most of the time, and people don't catch it. They can't even tell the difference. But there's a significant difference between laughing with joy and laughing maniacal. And you can see that reflected.
Yeah, I can see that.
You can see it reflected so clearly in people, because like you see like the Joker and all these other people in their acting, in like they do that laughter thing. Like the evil bad guys always do that laughing, like when they win or something. Dude, I've seen that in real life several times. In real life, okay, I'll be like praying for somebody, and they're like, I don't know why I did that, and they're embarrassed. They're like, I'm sorry, I don't know why I'm laughing right now at you. And I'm like, it's not you, it's fine. There's something in you that's laughing. And the minute they recognize when I say that, they go, oh my gosh, you're right. And it's like the light bulb clicks on. They're like, I legit have a demon. It literally just laughed through my mouth and I couldn't even control it. And they're like, oh my gosh, what the heck? And then once the light bulb goes on, I can cast the thing out so much easier because I'm like, don't worry about it. It's not you. There's something in you that's mocking me. And a lot of times the demons
don't worry, you're just possessed by demons.
I'm like, whatever. Yeah, literally. But it's comical. And in fact, there's an instance I prayed for a dude that I was in a church that didn't believe like fully in casting out demons and stuff, and there was this guy sitting behind me, and he was like totally demonized, and it was like clear that he had some mental issues. He's like sitting there drawing on a piece of paper furiously, and like the Spirit of the Lord is just like, hey, go talk to that guy. And I just go up and I sit down, and like it was towards the end of the worship thing and whatever, and I just walk over and I go, hey man, I'm like, what's up, dude? And he's like, nothing. And I'm like, what are you drawing? And he's drawing eyes. He's drawing eyeballs all over. And I'm like, oh, I'm like, of course you're drawing eyes. I'm like, what do you? I'm like, oh, that's cool, man. What are you drawing eyes for? And he's just like, oh, I just draw stuff. I just draw stuff. And I'm like, the eyes embody like, the seraphim angel. And Satan was called a cherub, and he also was described as being covered in eyes. And I started explaining some stuff to him, and he's just like, huh. And then like the demon straight starts like kind of manifesting in him, and he's like growling at me all of a sudden, and he goes back to normal, and he's like trying to pretend to be normal. And then I'm like sitting there talking with this guy. I'm like, hey, so I was like, do you hear the voices? I just straight up asked the dude, do you hear the voices? And he's like, I believe we all do. And I'm like, no, not everybody hears voices, bro. I'm like, that's not a normal response. And then like he was like, yeah, well I hear them, and they talk to me, blah blah blah. And he starts telling me about his experience of, he's like literally straight up being demonized, and he's in the middle of a church and nobody knows and nobody even cares. And I'm like talking with the guy, and I'm like, and I hear the Spirit of the Lord goes, he has the spirit of Joker. And I'm like, what the heck? I'm like, that's weird. And so then I'm like, all right. And I'm like, hey, so I'm just going to tell you something. I think you have something demonic attached to you, bro. I was like, to be completely honest, I'm just going to share this with you. And, if you want some help, I can pray for you. And he goes, yeah, I think I might too. I think I might have something attached to me too. And then I go, you want to know its name? And he's like, yeah. And I'm like, it's saying its name is Joker. And the guy's face just goes like completely blank. And he's like, I collect Joker. And he's like, my whole room is covered in Joker. He's like, I have statues of Joker. He's like, I have posters of Joker. He says his whole room, he's collected action figures of Joker. And dude, nuts experience thing. Cause I didn't know this guy. I just walked up to him and I'm like, I think the name of the demon's Joker. And like, he's just like, what the heck? And it like dawned on him. But anyways, I ended up praying for the dude, and there was some cool stuff that happened, and it was God totally moved. But it was fascinating to see that Joker demonic representation totally embodied itself in this guy as the Joker. And I was like, so weird.
So Paul, I wanted to ask you, actually, that's a good direction I wanted to go with. Mm-hmm. So the whole Joker connection in the movies now, had you ever heard, obviously a lot of people had seen all the Batman movies. You had, like Jack Nicholson played him in '89, and then you had, Heath Ledger, one of the most famous Joker experiences. I remember hearing this at the time, and of course, without any kind of spiritual understanding, I didn't understand this at all. Like Jack Nicholson claimed after Heath Ledger passed, he warned him about playing the Joker, and it was like that. Like if you go look that up, that's all he said. He didn't elaborate on what he meant. What do you think he meant by that? I mean, obviously, I have my theories, but like that's very cryptic. That it makes sense that draws into the acting stuff. This guy putting on the paint and becoming this maniacal character. Is that what he was warning about?
Well, yeah. Like I said, to dress like a clown is not a trivial thing, and that's the point. It's been made to be a trivial thing in our society in the West, but that's not at all how it's seen anywhere else in the world where they practice these rituals called ancestor spirit worship. They know why they're dressing like a clown. They're dressing to be possessed by the demons for power. They tell you that's why they're doing it. It's not even a secret. In the highly Christianized Western Hemisphere, it's harder for the demons to be so brash and open about the tactics and possession. And we, in the West been manipulated to believe that spirits are people, that you can communicate with through our occult means. If a demon was to manifest into a person openly, and we knew that, well, they run the risk of being cast out by somebody who has the Holy Spirit, because we're a heavily Christianized geographical location on the earth. Okay, so the demons can't be so out in the open about it as they are in these other ancestor spirit worship sects in other places around the earth, so they have to do it in a covert manner. And again, the costume of a clown was created by people who work intimately with demons through these secret societies. It's their version of the ancestor spirit costume used to channel specifically the Nephilim spirits. So when you have a character like the Joker in the media, which every year there's always some new Joker angle that gets created, a new film comes out. I think part 2 is about to come out, is it not?
I think so, yeah.
The mic, is it coming out of this mic?
No, you're good.
It's all good, is it? Yeah, so I've turned the mic up on here. I think people are saying my mic's a bit low and yours is a bit loud there. Whatever, we're fine. So yeah, when you have this character popularized over and over and over again every year, they're always repopularizing the Joker character. And then you get people dressing like it for Halloween, don't you? And then you get people idolizing the character as well, seeing it as a symbol of something fun. Why so serious? That's exactly what the DMT jesters say to people in that other realm. Don't take life too seriously, that kind of idea. Well, they're getting people to dress like it every year, pretty much for Halloween, which is Samhain, a Celtic holiday, and you understand they understood Samhain to be the time when the veil between the spirit realm and the physical realm is at its thinnest, when they're kind of just touching, and you can easily get in touch with the spirits during this time. So what they've managed to do is get people to dress like a Nephilim spirit just in time for when the veil is the thinnest, so the channels are more readily available, and they do it through the media, popularizing the costume of a clown. And you'll find it today, dressing like a clown is actually, as of 2023 and 24, high-end fashion. The fashion runways have gone with the clown aesthetic for these past 2 years, and they tried to do it in late 2022, but it was laughed off the runway, and people were saying, we can't do this. Then the next year they did it again for their fall collection, and now people are applauding it, saying it's stunning and brave to dress like a clown, and it's
stunning and brave.
Yeah, and the clown aesthetic is going to be in. It's vogue. It's what everyone's going to start doing, And obviously you see these runways. You can look this up right now. I'm not even joking. All fashion outlets are talking about the clown aesthetic being the it thing, But what you see on the runways are ridiculous, absolutely ridiculous costumes. But that'll trickle down to the outlets eventually in a more watered down version, the clothes they sell to us to wear, And don't be surprised if you start seeing the clown aesthetic becoming more and more popular. On TikTok, there's a huge underground subculture that got very popular in the past 3 years, which is called clowncore. And it's about people dressing like clowns as a serious fashion choice to go out in the public on a regular basis, and it's growing in popularity, especially among Gen Z. Surprisingly enough, the younger generations, they have pushed this on us for a long time. They're getting more and more people to dress this way, and they do it through people like the Joker. And you'll always, my last video actually in this series was about just the last 10 years of clown propaganda through the media, and why they're doing it, and how they're getting people to dress that way. They are pushing it hard now, really hard. Like they want you dressing like a clown because they want to create more channels, and that being ignorance of the law of the spiritual realm is not going to make you immune to the law. They know why they dress like clowns in these ancestor spirit worship cultures, to be possessed. Just because we don't know that's what it doesn't mean we're not going to get possessed. Okay, that's how it works.
Right.
And again, if you fill your room with iconography, idols dedicated to the Joker character, that's just opening up more channels. You're just asking for this thing to come into you and use you if you haven't got the Holy Spirit, something else is going to go in there, And this is the thing, they call it the spirit of Joker. Well, all Nephilim spirits are the spirit of Joker. There's very actually little distinction. That's kind of how they.
Well, it's like isn't that kind of like that trickster, that kind of trickster spirit? Is that kind of what that's?
Yeah, well, they all look like clowns. They all have that aesthetic about them, even in the spirit realm, And so to dress as a clown, I'm sure maybe there are slight differences in how the Nephilim looks, just how every snake is unique in color and design, but they're all snakes fundamentally. And if you dress in a specific way, you're inviting any of them in, really. It doesn't matter which clown you dress like. It's a channel to, it's an invitation to all the Nephilim, because that's what it is. If you mirror something in the spiritual, you create a portal, you create a channel, you create a connection, and that's what they're getting people to do.
That's
Yeah.
interesting what you're saying, and I was just thinking about that. Like if you guys were familiar with Heath Ledger before he played the Joker, it was like, I mean, he was a good actor. I mean, I think he was likable, but I mean, everybody said when he played the Joker, it was like you didn't even see Heath Ledger up there anymore. And I was just kind of just thinking about that, like,
yeah,
was that wasn't him?
No,
likely playing that, because he played the Joker so much different than anybody else did, and he really was very convincing the way he played it. And it's like, oh, I got the chills just thinking about that. Like that's what we saw up there was not Heath Ledger anymore.
Yeah, putting on a mask
Even
is
acting for
serious. And that's what actors do. All the original actors in theatre wore masks for this reason, and you see it yourself. And you were talking about it there, people were doing the clown act, embodying the spirit of comedy and humor or something like that, whatever. I've seen a video in the past where people put on the mask and they start going nuts. They start talking in tongues and making silly noises, and you can see these videos of people look like they're being possessed just as soon as they put a mask on. And I think it's extremely serious. I think we do not understand the power of masks. Like there's even a film called The Mask, played by Jim Carrey, one of the biggest Joker-like characters to ever exist. And once he goes on it possesses him. It takes over with the spirit of a Joker-like character of some sorts.
Yeah,
it's supposed to be Loki,
exactly.
isn't it, of the Norse mythology, but they're telling you in media what the role of masks really are used for and how they are still used today. And what is acting but somebody putting on a persona, someone changing their
well
ego,
isn't the symbol of the acting is like the one face is kind of like the one mask that's like kind of smiling, and the other one that's kind of frowning. It's like that's kind of symbolic of the whole art, isn't it?
It's modeled after Dionysus, who is the patron saint of theatre, the Greek god of wine, debauchery, parties, and theatre and acting. And Dionysus is basically a fallen angel. He was considered in the Greek pantheon an outsider god from Thracian culture, but he roamed Europe with his band of merry men, fauns and maenads, with a big party, and basically new people joined his band wherever he went and got put under his spell. And there's a strange part of that story where anybody who's around him for long enough will turn into a faun, will become a hybrid human, will become a half human, half animal hybrid.
Oh, wow.
So that's really strange, because you consider that the fallen angel were mixing of kinds and flesh during that time, and hybridizing humans after the Nephilim, when you couldn't mate with women anymore to create monsters, let's just mess with the DNA instead, and that was going on as well. So even in that Greek myth, you have this patron saint of theatre, and the mask is actually modeled after first his face, the Green Man face as well. It's the same person, and the smile actually isn't a smile; it's a heart shape. And this is where we get the symbol of a heart from as well. I did some research into this. The typical heart symbol. It has nothing to do with our heart, because our heart isn't shaped like
because they're not. Yeah, because it's not anatomically correct the way the heart's
No, it's actually
drawn.
modeled after the ivy. It's the ivy leaf, yeah. And the mouth of the mask was the ivy leaf, which looked like a big grin when you see the heart there. This big, pointed, powerful laughter face. But it's named after the ivy leaf, which was the flower of Dionysus, like the leaf of Dionysus. So that's where we get that mask from. And then if you flip the ivy leaf and put the heart upside down, it looks like it's crying, or then it's smiling, and then it kind of all got mashed together. So that's where we get it from, and it goes deep. Okay, I'm just touching over some things. I mean,
isn't Dionysus? I remember looking this up one time. I think we were researching Halloween, and so I think the Greeks celebrated Dionysus in some kind of festival to him around October 31st.
Yeah,
and they dressed up.
Yeah,
so it's like maybe that idea of like dressing in the character of the spirits of Dionysus.
Well, what happened in Europe, inspired by this Thracian cult, you'll find that region of Bulgaria, Romania now, that kind of area, the Eastern European region where that originally comes from, that ancient culture of Dionysus, they still do that practice. It's called the wild man tradition. And you'll find all of Europe does it, actually. Every country of Europe has an ancient wild man tradition. This is the Europeans' version of the ancestor spirit worship culture from like India or Australia or South America or North America or these other places. This is Europeans' version of it. It's called the Wild Man, and it's modeled after Dionysus and his band of demons, shall we call it. Well, there's all these myths and stories of giants with clubs covered in hair and weird psychedelic colours and horrible beasts roaming around with a club over their shoulder with the demons following them everywhere. So it's kind of modeled after this Dionysian story as well. And you'll find every year around this time, this winter solstice period, just before fasting and before like it kind of got Catholicized into the period before Lent. They would have this festival now, but its sources are this Thracian understanding, like you just explained. They would have this wild party of excess and drinking where they all dress like demons, like wild beast horned, big grinning fanged demon monsters, and every country in Europe has their own version of this. And that's they are dressing like demons to channel them to then have a big party in excess and sin, basically. But then they fast after that, like it was okay. It doesn't matter that we did all these horrible things.
I mean, that's like as you brought up the Illuminati earlier, that makes you think of like Eyes Wide Shut and like the wild, like Rothschild parties where they're wearing like wicked masks, like long noses and just deformed looking faces and stuff like that, all wearing their cloaks and they're all masked up.
It's interesting when you wear a mask, the embodiment that comes along with it. I don't know if you guys ever done this stuff, but like if you like I put on masks before I was Christian. I would like just play around and put on masks for fun and like do silly stuff, and we would like hang out. I had these big blow up dinosaur costumes that we would put in the dinosaur costumes and like walk around and terrorize the town. We were just being goofy, me and my friends. And so like, but like when you put on a mask and you put on something that covers your face, it's very, very easy for you to embody a totally different character. Like I have friends that when they are like totally like reserved, but once they put the mask on, it's like, boom, they become a totally different person. They become the character of whatever they want it to be. And it's like, it's fascinating. Like all these kids that are doing these furry things, you see this furry trend where they put on these big animal, and it's so disturbing. Yeah, it's so disturbing. But like when they're doing it because they're socially awkward, but when they put the mask on and embody this furry, which happens to be, by the way, there's a demon named Fur, heads up. Okay, if the people don't know that furries are derived from the demon Fur, look it up. It's interesting. But you put on this mask and they become a totally different character. They're more outgoing, they're more friendly, they're more everything because all the anxiety leaves, because all the demons left you because you're embodying a bigger demon. And they're like, hey, cool, yeah, come into this. And they want you in these costumes. They want people dressed up all the time. They want people dressed up like furries. They want people dressed up like clowns. They want people embodying this, because you can get into a character. And it's like, once you get into that character, it's so much easier to channel spirit. This is how you channel demons, guys. People are like, oh, I don't have a demon, bro. Like, you don't even know what it is to channel a demon. Like, but it's so simple to channel demonic entities. It's when you begin to embody other personalities, anything other than the image of Christ that we're supposed to conform to, you're potentially channeling demons.
Oh yeah,
Paul, I wanted to shift gears a little bit to think about the whole jester mythos, because it's kind of like, again, like jesters and clown can kind of almost be like, you can kind of use either interchangeably. Like the whole idea of like we see in like medieval times, like the royals had a court jester, and it's like one of this like weird kind of things, like, and they dressed up, and it's interesting how they were dressed. Like I was even thinking about Loki having those kind of his horns are kind of turned down, and you think about like the way the jester hats might look, and then they're typically depicted with like little bells or ruffles, and they have like it's almost like this duality aspect where they show like one half one color. They're wearing these checkerboard outfits. Like I mean, obviously, to me, it seems like these characters would be annoying. Like why would like a king want a jester around? Is like, have you looked into that?
Yeah, it was a power status symbol more than anything, because you have to understand, after the collapse of Rome around 500, that period of time, if you want to go off the chronology, that is
between 500 AD and like 1000, and
well, yeah,
nobody really knows.
Well, but if you want to go off the official chronology, that was
yeah,
told,
we'll go into some post
we'll go off that for
stuff
now,
after
though.
this.
But either way, it seems like after the excesses of Rome and its collapse, there was a lot of out of work actors and performers of that time. They were considered something of the devil to be a performer and actor through a lot of the reasons we're talking about now. You know, it's considered demonic to lie and put on a face and a role and deceive by acting, you know. So there was a lot of a big Catholic kind of clamp down throughout Europe on performances, and it was kind of, unless you're doing a highly Christianized performance where the devil is the bad guy, you can't really put on performances type of thing, you know. And you find a lot of these actors that kind of lost work during this time found a lot of work doing private shows for very rich people, okay, for private entertainment, just going to a party and making them all laugh by telling jokes. And this is where you start to get the jester becoming a thing. This is where it becomes a European icon in a sense. And you'll find, you know, the rich and powerful were the only ones allowed to have or could afford a performer of some kind, you know, because it was, who's going to tell a king he can't have a jester or this type, you know. It's they can watch these plays and these performances, but the peasantry couldn't, type of stuff. That's basically where it comes from. And then it developed into like a jester was literally a personal fool, a personal performance. Different types of jesters. You have the idiot jester or the quick-witted one, you know. But that's basically the two. It bounce back and forth. The one that makes the king laugh by being a drunkard, or the one that makes the king laugh by poking fun at him. And you get that old adage of the Joker is the only one allowed to mock the king to remind him of his humanity. And I don't know. And when you actually understand what we understand now about what it means to embody the jester archetype or the spirit of Joker, you know, you're actually channeling demons who used to be kings and rulers, and now they are right there at the right hand of the king, whispering in his ear through the channel who's dressed like them. So you have to think about it from this new spiritual perspective. You know, I don't think it was as simple as it was, but if you look at the history of some of these jesters, some of them were actually really funny and did some really funny things. One of them really pissed off his king, and the jester had to flee because of how forward he was, even suggesting things the king should be doing, you know. And the king didn't like that. But then, so what he did, he faked his own death, and then at his funeral, the king was over his body and said, "Oh, I forgive you for everything you've done. What have I done? I wish I never said all these things." And then he jumps up and says, "I'll take that royal pardon. Thank you very much." And then there you go, he's back. You know, it's kind of, that's the kind of things they would do. These jokers, they would play on people like that, you know. That's quite a famous story, you'll find. But that's where it comes from. It comes from basically a status symbol more than anything, because the Joker costume is actually modeled after the king. That's the point. They're supposed to dress like a caricature of a king. They have their scepter, they have their crown, which is the jester horns with the bells on the end. They're like a mockery of the king. They're supposed to mimic the king. So the jester costume is actually very specific to the mimicry of a king-like character. You'll find the proto-jester comes from Harlequin, which was through the Commedia dell'arte movement. Well, actually, this is, I mean, so that's where jesters come into early medieval periods. So once you hit the 1600s, there's this introduction of a jester character called Harlequin into a very popular improv troupe from there. It's all improvisation, called the Commedia dell'arte. And the Commedia dell'arte were something that developed out of the same 1,000 years jesters were developing. They were traveling showmen who were trying to put on quick shows with quick makeshift stages in cities to try and make a quick buck before moving to the next place. You know, they were always moving to probably avoid the law, to be honest, because obviously it was frowned upon to have these type of shows. But you'll find eventually they incorporated something similar to a jester into their character list. And this is Harlequin. Harlequin is actually modelled after the Wild Man, which we were mentioning earlier. He was the giant Nephilim creature, which this traveling troupe noticed.
Oh, because he's got a club, right?
Yeah, the club is the slapstick, which the Harlequin gets to have, where he slaps the stage and changes.
Well, so is that so? Where do you think that, like, isn't that kind of obviously a major twist on it? The fact that now we have Harley Quinn, the Joker's girlfriend, and it's like some deranged female clown, which obviously is not really like. Well, I mean, where does that go? Or
it's a play on this character, because you have to see Harley Quinn in the Commedia dell'arte movement. he was introduced because they had noticed all these places they traveled to in Europe, they all have a wild man tradition. They all venerate the wild man. So let's incorporate the wild man into our plays so everyone will recognize this new stock character. Everyone knows what the wild man is, so we need that character in our plays. And he was meant to be the demonic character. That's his role in the play, in the improv. He is the demon who has the power to change everything with his slapstick just by whacking it on the floor. He could move really fast like he was flying, like he had agility like a beast, you know, because he's named after these wild men, these beast-like giants, you know, that were quick-footed and covered in tufts of hair. You know, the original Harley Quinn character was covered in tufts of hair and had this horrible.
Is that like is that where we get Bigfoot? Is that where like the Bigfoot Yeti stuff comes from?
That's the European version. Yeah, the European version of Bigfoot is the wild man. It's the same thing. In my book, actually, I'm writing, I've done a whole like chapter dedicated to going through every country, and they all have their own version of the wild man or Bigfoot. You know, Bigfoot is just the American version of this European tradition. Yeah.
I wanted to mention something. You know, I have a theory that I've kind of thought of, but I don't know if this lines up with anything that you've studied. Maybe check into it a little bit. But one of my theories was that you know, when Jesus came, he said, you know, all authority on heaven and earth I have given unto you, therefore now go. Right? And he sends out the 72, and the 72 come back and say, Lord, Lord, even the demons obey us. Okay, this is the demons. Like, there's a difference between a demon and a daemon. A daemon is like a foul spirit or an evil spirit. A demon is a physical bodied entity. And Jesus said, you know, on this rock, I will build my church. And he said it at the gates of hell, right? And so he said it where Pan was.
Caesarea Philippi.
Yes, Caesarea Philippi, right there. Yeah, and so like that's where the goat god Pan was known for existing, like actually existed. And so some of the stuff that Jesus went out and did was sent out the Christians. They went around casting out physical bodied demons, like these kind of entities. They went around like not just casting out spiritual sickness, they were legit interacting with entities. There was a few of these Nephilim hybrid creatures left. They were going around casting out. And one of my theories is that, like, well, I was thinking about the Harley Quinn, like with it, those the horns of the hat, which looked like horns, which a lot of the things that they had, like, it would be very easy that if you had the authority of Christ and you're going around casting out demons, that maybe they imprisoned some of these demons as their comical relief, and they legit were demons in the very beginning. Some of these jesters were a king saying, oh, look how much power I have. I've even imprisoned a demon and I make him dance for me in the name of Jesus. Dance.
Interesting. Yeah.
And like, that was kind of one of my perspective theories that I was looking into. I haven't looked into it enough to see if there's any evidence for it, but this is just kind of what I had in my thoughts, like seeing that connection, because even they talk about it, you know, the book of Solomon, I don't know, or the
wisdom of Solomon.
Yeah, the Lesser Keys of Solomon. It's an occult book, witchcraft book. Don't read it, but whatever. Anyways, like in it, he talks about how Solomon imprisons demons to work for him.
Puts them to work.
To build his castle and do so. And it's almost like a reflecting image of the fact that if you're a king, you're so powerful, you can even imprison a Harley Quinn or a demon or this Nephilim thing with horns and make it be your little dancing monkey, because you have authority over it, because there was the authority of Christ that was given to us. And I think that might have been something connected. I don't know if you've ever looked into anything related to that kind of stuff, but
well, I believe hybridized. Let's call them cryptids. That's the modern version of this exact same phenomena. I think they're still with us. They're still physically around, and yes, even they in physical form will flee in the name of Christ. Absolutely. And I do think it wasn't that long ago we still had like Silocephaly dogmen around. We have the Blemmies, which are quite a popular one, where these chest-headed people were around. These strange, weird, manipulated humans of some kind all over the place. Wolfmen, dogmen, horsemen, Mothman is another one. We got lizard men, reptile men. Animal human hybrids are everywhere, all over the earth. We call them cryptids today, and physically I think there were probably a lot more around in the past. Maybe they're a bit more underground now and have to stay a bit more hidden because we have weapons which could just wipe them out very quickly. I think it's a different world now, you know. So I think they're a bit more And plus, they've got some weird kind of like spiritual psychedelic aspect to them, which they're not quite physical, but they are physical at the same time. They seem to have portal hopping abilities. It gets really, we've all researched cryptids. It gets weird. Okay, but
Yeah, yes, you could say that.
but I believe there's different classes of Nephilim. I don't think they were Nephilim necessarily. I think the Nephilim are specifically the hybridized creatures of humans who mix with angels. Okay, and they're the ones who look like clowns. They're the ones who look like jesters now in the spirit realm. There is a period just after the Nephilim were wiped out as punishment for the Watchers who created them. They had to watch their own beloved ones kill each other. That's the Nephilim. They became disembodied spirits. It's possible they were revived after the flood as Rephaim. That's another whole debate for another time, but they were there before and after either way. But once the Nephilim were gone, the clown-like beings, it seems like humans took it upon themselves to hybridize themselves to be like Nephilim. And I think this is where you get cryptids from. I think this is where they started to be created. In the book of Jasher, it's described as it was the mixing of kinds took place, and the sons of men taught each other the mixing of kinds with help from the sons of God. I believe. I think that was the second attempt to corrupt God's creation. And if you think about it, what can survive a flood but a mermaid, a half fish, half human person?
Right, the sirens.
Yeah, exactly.
The sirens,
so
right?
I think it's where we get all these hybridized creatures from. They are humans who try to, and this is my own term, Nephilimify themselves. They try to become like
Nephilimify.
Yeah, but the thing is, I think there's actually
Nephilimized.
Nephilimify. We can coin many terms, yeah. But they
Nephophiles.
But they became mutants. They became X-Men. They are no longer men. They used to be men.
Interesting.
And I think they had superpowers as a result of doing this. They had the skin or the chitin of an insect, so they had armored skin instead, or they had the agility of a bull and strength of a bull or something, or they became insect people, moth people. They could fly. They could suddenly breathe underwater. They became Aquamen. There's many things you can do. This is where the superhero mythos comes from, I believe. This time where humans changed themselves and they Nephilimified themselves. Now, I think there's a detrimental effect to editing your body like that, and I think it affects the soul too. And I think
you're not welcomed in normal society if you look like a moth.
True, but I think the corruption.
Well, that's the mark of the beast, bro.
Yeah.
That's why it's called the mark of the beast. It's not called the mark of Satan. It's not called the mark of the devil. It's called the mark of the beast because you're Nephilimizing yourself. And I think there's a realm at which they're gonna make the new vaccine or whatever thing they're going to give to us that is going to be the Nephilimizing thing, where they give it to you and you're going to go on like a mushroom trip or you're going to have an experience where you go into the ethereal realm, the astral realm, you grab your soul and you pull it out of the realm of the spiritual realm where it's at, and you merge it into your body and you become a modern day Nephilim. Like, I think that's what this is all leading to. That's why the drug thing is so blended in with all this, the hybridization, because I think they're prepping people. They want people accustomed to the drug spiritual realm going there, so that way when you take the new vaccine, it will allow you to be brought into the spiritual realm unbeknownst to yourself. You're bringing in yourself. You're Nephilimizing yourself.
What about what I was thinking about, Paul, though, too, is that, like, obviously what most people, at least early on, would recognize where clowns came from would be like the circus when I was a kid. So obviously if you see all the Barnum and Bailey stuff, when they have a circus going back and forth, so you have the carnies, right? You have clowns and you have very strange freaks that are there. And it's like, I remember one time I think after I found your channel, I was looking into the freaks. Most of them were like, they weren't fake. Like, obviously you have these people that had these weird deformities, and is like, obviously it sounds like it fits together like peanut butter and jelly. Like, have you looked into the circus stuff? I imagine you have.
I have, yeah. So just to quickly summarize the last point there, I believe when these humans corrupted themselves physically, they corrupted their soul as well, and possibly when they die, they suffer the same fate as the Nephilim. They also trapped here and became spirits, so demons. This is why we have many different types of demons. This is why we have people dressing like human-animal hybrids at the Wildman tradition, because they are trying to mimic the spirits that are on the other side, who are a mix of demons, which are the Nephilim, but also this other strange lesser demon, which are the human-animal hybrids. Not all of them. Some are spiritual, some are physical. This is like you said, there is a difference. There's some still around knocking about in physical sense, but if they're dead, they're stuck on Earth as a spirit, which causes and afflicts harm and causes damage. So there are many. They don't all look like clowns. Is what I'm trying to say. Some of them will also look like Pan. a goat man. Okay, things like that. You know what I mean? So I'm talking about a very specific class of demon here, the Nephilim specifically. They're the ones that have jester-like qualities in the spiritual, clown-like qualities in the physical. But they're not around physically anymore, so we don't really see them anymore. So it's a bit of maybe you could argue Bigfoot is a descendant through the Elio and the Eliud, and they may be the last remnants of something similar to a Nephilim creature, which is why we have giant hairy wild men in Europe described in the medieval period and just prior to that. So that kind of rounds that off. Now, we're talking about the circus and freaks. There's not so much a link to the demons directly, but there is a link to the person who came up with the freak show and why it is even a part of the circus, who is a member of secret society. So we're talking about P.T. Barnum, Phineas Taylor Barnum. He was who's considered the greatest showman. There was a film made about his life, which was very generous.
Yeah.
Okay, right. The truth is, he was a very horrible human being through and through. Okay, he only cared about money basically, and anything he did which seemed caring, it was done for publicity first and foremost. Everything was out there in the open for the public to see because he wanted to give the illusion that he was a charitable person. He was actually a member of the Odd Fellows, which is a secret society, an offshoot of Freemasonry. I'm pretty sure
a couple of American presidents were members of the Odd Fellows.
More than a couple. You should look at the list of people.
I believe you. I remember going down the list and I remember seeing Odd Fellows come up on a few of them at least.
You should look into the list. It's insane how many people have been a member of this specific fraternal order who were in extremely high positions of power everywhere, even in the UK.
Yeah, it's called Roy L. Yeah, Roy L. L meaning person of God, and Roy meaning kings. So yeah, Royals.
But the Odd Fellows, funnily enough, their logo is 3 rings interlocking each other, like 3 chain links. And if you think of
the 3-ring circus,
P.T. Barnum did come up with the 3-ring circus. Yeah, so he was incorporating his occult symbols into the circus as soon as he got involved with it. He actually only got involved with the circus quite late in life, when he was 60, in about 1892 or something like that. So quite late, quite late to be joining. Prior to that, he was a bit of a con man charlatan who ended up buying a museum in New York, and he would put on fake things, he claimed, for example, he had a real mermaid, and it was a fish head sewn. It was a monkey head sewn onto the body of a fish or something like that. But he managed to make people come and see these crazy attractions he claimed to have, and he had freaks along the side with his traveling show as well. Deformed people, he would pay them to come and be a part of his display and bring more.
He'd exploit people. Exploit people.
He exploited a particular person who was actually one of his distant relatives. It was they called him General. It was called Stratton, his second name. I can't remember his first name off the top of my head right now, but his second name's Stratton. He was a midget, basically, a very small man. He couldn't grow any more than 3 foot tall or something like that, and he dressed him up like a general and called him General Tom Thumb. This was named after a book written during the time period about a man who goes to the realm of giants, I think it is, or something like that. So he's supposed to be a small person, and that's why he did it, Anyway, General Tom Thumb, turns out he travelled and he could sing and dance. He taught him how to sing and dance. He got permission from the parents to bring him into the show. And people loved him. People loved this General Tom Thumb, and this was like the start of the freak show, by the way. This is like his first freak, I don't want to call them that because that's not really what they were. They were just people who have deformities and issues who he exploited and called that, But people loved him, actually, and he became very, very famous and very rich because of it, and made P.T. Barnum very rich because of it as well. But Barnum, for example, like he met somebody and married this other small lady, and obviously she couldn't have children. She couldn't bear children. So what he did, he faked that they had a child and took pictures of them holding a child and made money off them having a child that they didn't actually have. Do you get what I mean? This is how low he would go when he first got into the business.
Well, is he the one who had the famous phrase that a sucker's born every minute?
Well, it's attributed to him, but that's actually, I looked into it. That's not him who said it. It was the judge who presided over the case. Now, I get this. This is where giants get involved, all right? It turns out at the time there was this other showman who claimed to have the body of a real giant mummy, okay? P.T. Barnum then heard this story, made his own fake giant body, and said he owned it, and then went on to get people to come see his show of the real giant body, but it was a hoax. He made up a fake version. and the person who had the real body sued him for taking the limelight. So this went to court, and apparently the judge was like, just threw the case out and says, this is ridiculous. There's a sucker born every minute. So it's the judge who said that over how
Interesting.
over how ridiculous that case was to begin with. So he got away with, again, conning people. But funny enough, this small person, General Tom Thumb, he became a 33-degree Freemason. He became a Grand Master.
Wow.
Yeah, and
course.
probably through his
Wow.
connections with P.T. Barnum, who got him into the fraternity, who was a high-level Oddfellow, I think they're all Freemasons. I think it's all the same thing. Albert Pike was an Oddfellow as well as a Freemason as well.
Interesting. And he was the
Charlie
KKK starter and everything. Yeah.
Charlie Chaplin was a member of the Oddfellows. Winston Churchill was Ulysses S. Grant. Many presidents, many statesmen, many high-performing actors as well have been members of this fraternity in particular. So, like I said, the original circus, years and 100 years before this, 70 years before this, was created by Charles Dibdin, a Freemason I mentioned earlier, who turned his horse trick circle into what's called the Royal Circus. So he brought that word circus into the vernacular to describe that particular type of show. Prior to that, they weren't called circuses. So a Freemason invented the word circus. Later on, an Oddfellow created the three-ring circus and incorporated his freak shows into it and made it more popular. You'll find the circus itself is a direct copy of Freemasonic rituals. So you have the ringmaster, that's Solomon, the ringmaster who used the ring to control the demons.
He
to
had
build
the
his
ring.
temple,
That's right.
And what does a ringmaster do but orchestrate the performers or the clowns, the demons? He's the orchestrator of that, and it's a giant Freemasonic ritual just put into the public eye. So not only is the ringmaster a Solomon analog, but he is also the Grand Worshipful Master of the Lodge, who also wears a top hat. The Grand Worshipful Master of Freemason ritual, the Grand Worshipful Master is the only one allowed to wear a top hat. No one else is allowed to wear a hat.
Interesting. It's all connected. It's all connected. I was actually just thinking about it, like the way a guy like P.T. Barnum actually put this stuff out there. It's almost like that. Sometimes I believe like they put these things out there this is fake. So everybody would, now that when they would see clowns and freaks, they'd be like, this is this, that's that stuff that everyone gets fooled with, almost like what the devil would do is to try to put this stuff out there and make everyone not take it seriously.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
So that way, when you're saying I saw there's a dog man that lives in the mountains behind my house, they'd be like, oh yeah, you mean like the dog boy at P.T. Barnum's thing?
Oh yeah, absolutely. I think that's the game they were playing. Trivialize the truth, make it something fun for the family and fictional and
They've
fake.
been doing that forever
through the circus. So they trivialize the whole ritual of invocating demons by turning it into something fun for the family and for the kids. They call it a circus, but really what it is, it's a demonic invocation ritual directly copied out of Freemasonic lodges and modeled after ancestor spirit worship cultures as well. It's sinister how obvious this is. I mean, look, never mind P.T. Barnum. He eventually teamed up with the Ringling Brothers. The Ringling Brothers, every one of them, Freemasons.
Yeah.
The Grand Baraboo Lodge in Wisconsin is what they were all members of. Okay. Who else have we got? In fact, they all got together and did a big show. 10 circuses, all Freemason run, using Freemason companies who made the costumes for Freemason lodges and backdrops of Freemason logic rituals. All of them involved in making this giant spectacular called King Solomon and the Queen of Sheba. So King Solomon brought into it again, and it's talking.
Really?
Yeah,
Okay.
absolutely. And they all came together and did a huge, grand, spectacular show about this demonic whole event, and everything about it was just Freemasonic run from the beginning. And these are all, every circus, they call themselves the Ringling Bros. Why do you think that is? It's something to do with them actually being brothers to each other. They're all members of the fraternity. They're all brothers of the fraternity. That's what you call them when you're a member of a Freemason lodge. You're a brother. They're telling you in the title, they've been there since the beginning. They've incorporated all their signs and symbols into every early circus ritual. The clown is just the perfect cover for a demon, basically. That's what they do,
And that big mouth that they use in a lot of different things, where it's like you walk into the mouth.
Oh, yeah.
You see that throughout history, that giant mouth doorway entrance that they have. It's like totally reminiscent of the Giants. You're being eaten by a giant as you walk into this, and it's like totally like telling you you're going into the mouth of the demon. Like you're literally
that's Travis Scott. You know, the Travis Scott concert, and obviously there's a famous painting from like what the 1500s of some kind of a demon, like basically the mouth of hell, basically going. You know.
Well, there's actually, I don't know where it is. It's somewhere in Europe. It might be Ireland. I'm not sure, but there is an ancient cave, which is the depiction of a giant with his mouth open that you can walk into. It's probably modeled after. I think it's Ogmius. It's based off. Who's like the god of time, who has chains coming off his tongue, and he grabs the spirits of men and takes them to the underworld, which is a very polite way of saying he eats human beings. You know, that's a very, it's a very mythical way of saying the murdering people. You know. Taking their soul to the underworld. So he murders people. Then is that what you're trying to tell me? A giant goes around eating people. But they love to stylize the truth, and that's what the circus is. From the very beginning, it's all Freemasonic occult through and through. Everything about it, even the image of a Western clown, is a copy of how they did it in these ancestor spirit worship cultures in India specifically. But it's everywhere. The similarities in all of them, and that's what my work shows. The similarities. Yeah.
It's totally reflected in like Disney too, and you know, Disneyland and like Club 33. People still are like, "Oh, Club 33. Why do you think it's called Club 33? This is Freemason Club." Duh.
Yeah.
Like wake up.
Well, that is actually maybe that's a good place to kind of to end this on, is the fact that like the clown stuff, as that stuff got put in our faces as like the fact that you made this connection. And as I'm sure as everyone listened to it, it seems so obvious now. It's like it seems undeniable. But the first time I heard that, I thought, even as somebody who does what we do, I thought, oh, that's really nah. And then you're like, oh yeah, it's actually got there's so much evidence that that's true. And so then you think like the circus and stuff like that. It's like that all this stuff is not subtle. It's like it's not subtle in the least, and it's only until you go back and you look, is it so like, well, how did I never notice? I guess because we're distracted by it. I guess that's the whole point.
Well, it's always it's hidden in plain sight. That's how they've always operated. That which has been seen cannot be unseen. Once you understand how the magic trick works, you'll never be fooled by it again. That's how it works. So all I've done is point out what was always there, and once you see it, you can't unsee it. So this has been. I didn't create this. I've just pointed out what was happening, So we've uncovered a new occult symbol that we weren't supposed to interpret or understand. And in a way that gives us power now, because like I said, we cannot be tricked by the magic anymore. That's why I do this. People ask me, what's the point in all of this? It's to know your enemy, know how they work, know how they operate, understand how symbols work. Now you know it's not trivial to dress like a clown. It's actually extremely serious occult ritualistic practice. It has detrimental spiritual effects to dress like certain things. It matters, and it affects matter. You have to be careful about these things. It's like I said, I know what it sounds like when I first say these things. I really do. But let's just quickly go through a clown. I mean, a clown, white skin. Most Nephilim depicted them in white skin. Red around the mouth, cannibalistic in nature, but also, could you imagine a snake with lips? That would look pretty weird. Big red lips. A snake can open its jaw. It can dislocate its jaw, in fact, to eat its prey. I believe the Nephilim had the same traits picked up from the feathery flying serpent seraphim parents. They had big, wide, grinned mouths, that went up to here, and they could open it really wide.
There's a dude. His name's Terror. Have you heard of him? Terror? The man that can eat anything. And he was like French dude who he could eat anything. Look him up, dude. He's very fascinating. It will connect you to that.
I will.
He had an insatiable appetite. Okay, his name is Terror, where we get like the word terror. Okay, and he was this French dude who the military hired him to eat a box because he could eat anything. He started eating children towards the end of his life, actually, and that's what ended up he went into a hospital and babies went missing. And this is an actual dude in history. But they gave him a box with a secret code in it, and he swallowed the box, and then he would defecate it out and took it across lines. But he was like a traveling kind of circus guy that was like, oh, he could eat a million things. Watch him eat all this stuff. Yeah,
interesting.
So the mouth thing and all that. But he could dislocate his jaw was one of the things they said. It was like he could like unhinge his jaw somehow.
You will have to send me.
His mouth was unwidely open.
You'll have to send me a link to that name
Oh, yeah.
specifically, because
Yeah.
that ties into my work perfectly. That's going in the book, so thanks for that. I'll give you a credit for that one. But
Okay,
yeah.
perfect.
But this is the point. So these are features, like everything about a clown is a caricature of the true features of these serpent human hybrid Nephilim creatures. Okay, so the big wide grin probably got from their dragon parents. The slit down the eye, which you see on face makeup of clowns quite often, that's a reptilian slit. That's a reptilian eye. That's a reference to that.
Yeah.
If not that, they're painted with big, high black brow ridges. Okay, paint that in with blue like they often do, and close your eye. It looks like you have a big, giant blue eye. That's the point. These were the glowing ones. They had big, huge, glowing, serpentine, bulging out eyeballs. And that's what the clown makeup is trying to exaggerate the features of. Not only does the high brow ridge do that, but it also makes them like they have an elongated forehead. A lot of clowns wear the skull cap to make themselves look like they have a pinhead of some kind. Elongated skulls is a Nephilim trait. We find those skulls everywhere. That's what
isn't Pennywise is presented as having that big,
a huge head,
strange shaped head.
Absolutely, the big wild red hair. That's a Nephilim trait, red hair. Yeah. So that's just the.
Wait a minute, Paul. Wait a minute, Paul. What about Paul though? Do I have to address? You got red hair though.
No, I don't.
How do we know we can trust you?
When I talk about red, I mean Crayola.
I know.
I'm talking Crayola red. I'm talking like this rose in the background red, and not ginger. I'm talking blood red hair. That's what these things had, And by the way, I'm strawberry blonde.
I only say that because as Brian and I were just mentioning before, it's like the gingers are the only people you're allowed to make fun of still, like, and you can get away with that with impunity.
And they say the gingers don't have a soul, which is obviously reminiscent of the Nephilim not having souls in some regards.
Is that I was wondering the connection between the red hair of people and in that whole way people can mock gingers in that sort of way. It does seem like there's some connection to this red hair, and these people are soulless as far as like God did not want to create these things.
Well, don't forget.
Not saying people with red hair. I'm saying like that there's people are making the connections.
Everybody with red hair is human today.
I'm not saying that.
Okay, let's clarify. Everybody with red hair is human today, but the origins of red hair could potentially have been connected to the Nephilim giants, and we know that just because there's
other people making those connections to that.
Perhaps. I think if there are any Nephilim DNA people around today, it's very watered down and mixed in with humanity now, and it'd be difficult to separate a human from a Nephilim hybrid. That's what the kings and rulers and our leaders today believe themselves to be. They believe they are divine right to rule. They have angel blood in them because they are the descendants of these ancient kings and rulers, which were the Nephilim. That's the house of the dragon, we'll call them. They believe they have the blood in them, the blue blood, the giant blood, to be kings and rulers. So exactly. I'm not saying they are, but they believe they're the descendants of Nephilim. I'm not saying they are, but that's what they believe. In terms of my complexion, I'm probably from Celtic culture, where the Tuatha De Danann were based, which is another offshoot of fallen angels who created Nephilim. It's a whole thing, But it's funny because I actually have a condition called the Curse of the Celts. I got diagnosed not long ago, and it basically I store too much.
That off you, bro.
I store too much iron. Okay, so I can't break iron down in my body, the metal. So what happens is my organs hold on to it. And as a result, it damages your organs if not sorted out. You have to get the iron out of your body. I'm about to start treatment on Monday, actually, funnily enough, to get this sorted. But
interesting.
It turns out this is primarily a Northern European problem. It's something we have to deal with primarily. There are outliers.
Well, there's that connect. Well, there's obviously that connection between the spiritual and iron as well. That's sort of weird, isn't it? Like,
have an ability to
the iron, and like, do you remember? Like, I think the Egyptians when they first got iron, I think one of their pharaohs had a knife, and they said it came from like something that came down from heaven, and it was like iron. They associate with the spiritual. Even Jesus comes down the day of the Lord with the rod of iron.
Absolutely. Well, there's probably there's something there.
I'm going to tell you.
Go ahead.
I was going to tell you something just to give you some information in regards to that. I actually talk about this a lot in my next documentary where I'm talking about the whole connection to the genetic links as to HR negative blood and on all these different things, and the Nephilim connection between that and where the Nephilim gone today and what they are reminiscent in our genetics today. And dude, it's gonna be mind blowing, all the information I've got like packed out to come out. But but interestingly, I'll tell you right now, every genetic disease that we have in the world today is reminiscent of Nephilim tampering in your genome. So what you got, that curse of the Celts, is a hybridized genetic modification that God did not intend for, and this is part of the reason why Jesus heals people. Okay, and so like when I pray for people, bro, I know this understanding, and I have prayed for people and seen miraculous things and people get healed. Okay, and I have seen things. So like, dude, you know, something to think about, bro. You can pray that off of yourself. I know that, or I can help pray it off of you because I've done it several times. Because Jesus came to restore. This is part of why he wasn't just going around healing people for the sake of healing people. He was healing people from the destruction that the Nephilim and the fallen angels had corrupted in the genome of our society. And that was one of the authorities that we were given, was to command sickness to leave. Mark 16:17. These signs will follow those who believe. In my name, they will drive out demons. And it says they will lay their hands on the sick people and they will get well. So just a little tidbit there. If you want that to go, you can pray that thing off.
I'm praying every day. I'm praying every day. And if you want to pray for me, I will not turn it down. Absolutely. Yeah. And but on the curse of the Celts thing, this does connect to the Nephilim actually more so than you think it does. It turns out now it's a part of the same condition, but not everyone who gets this has this problem. But we're talking about the red nose of a clown. Where does that come from? Why do we have red noses on clowns? It turns out it's a result of this curse of the Celts issue. Okay, so like I said, it's primarily pale-skinned people, Northern Europeans, who have this condition. Now, the Nephilim were the whitest of the whites. They were extremely pale. They were vampiric white, okay? And they had this problem, I believe, and this is why I believe this, because in extreme cases, and you talked about it earlier, you know, when people get drunk, they get red cheeks and a red nose. Okay, now that's actually a myth. Okay, people who have hemochromatosis or the curse of the Celts, they can develop what's known as a Rhynophyma. And that's where the nose starts to grow and gets bulbousy and large and red and pus-filled, and it gets bigger and bigger and bigger, and it becomes a big round red painful nose on the tip of the face. That's can develop in extreme cases of rosacea and hemochromatosis. Okay, and again, it's primarily an extremely pale-skinned problem. And I believe the Nephilim had the palest skin. They likely had this condition. And as they got older and bigger, their noses did grow to become big, round, red, and bulbous, like a clown nose today. Yeah.
Wow.
And
we know they had big feet because they were giants.
Absolutely, yeah. Right. And stilts, and clowns are often on stilts because they're representing giants. Clowns have psychedelic colored pattern clothing because serpents have psychedelic pattern colored skin. They're the most psychedelic of animals. Reptiles are insane, so are amphibians and insects, which are probably other hybridized things from the angelic parents, animalistic features. You know, they're very colorful creatures. They weren't just white skinned. I think the face was predominantly white, but I reckon they had psychedelic pearlescent patterns like a serpent all over their skin. The Nephilim, I reckon they were very colorful to behold. They probably had feathers sticking out of them, like dinosaurs are said to have feathers today, you know, by mainstream science. I think these things were psychedelic monsters to behold. And the clown,
plumed serpents.
Yes, yeah. The clown is just a caricatured image of these monsters. And again, the red nose can be scientifically explained through the condition of a Rhynophyma. And you can look it up. Humans have it. Big red bulbous noses like a clown. And the only way to get rid of it is to shave it off. Go ahead. Yeah.
So Paul, as I say, as we wrap this up, I wanted, because if you are working on another book, and you probably have heard this, but I did a video a while back connecting some comic book characters to either Nephilim or demons.
Yeah. And
I mentioned that the Batman himself embodies this spirit of fear that he projects onto his, his basically the bad guys, and he uses fear as a weapon. And it mentions in the comic books that obviously he embraced his fear. But so like people are saying, oh, you're reaching. But anyways, I did some research, and there was a Wonder Woman comic, I guess probably from like the early 80s, where it was all wrapped in, obviously she's wrapped in Greek mythology. Well, they actually they had the Joker and Batman in that, and they epitomized the brothers or the sons of Ares. And so here's Batman Batman and the Joker depicted as Demos and Phobos. So the Joker is where we get the word demon from the Greek demos. So that's who the Joker is. He's the demon, and then Batman, his twin brother, embodied the spirit of fear, which obviously is the twin of another demon.
Phobia.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, Phobo, yeah, the spirit of fear, and I think Demos was like the spirit of like terror.
Yeah, well, Batman is a human-animal hybrid reference as well, so it's all there.
Yeah. Had you ever seen that where the Joker's represented as Demos?
I have not, but I did see an episode in an alternative universe in a comic where the Butler becomes the Joker character in order for Batman to have an enemy, because he kind of needs the Joker. That's kind of the back and forth they always have. They need each other, you know.
Right.
And funny enough, when he puts on the makeup of the clown, he gets possessed and starts laughing hysterically and becomes the Joker, you know. And it's like he's going through a possession ritual. So I think they go through these points of dressing like a clown is demonic in everything, including what you've just shown me there.
Right, and it's interesting too. It's like that. Obviously, if you think of like Mars or Aries, think an angel.
Yeah.
His sons, his twin sons, are demons.
Absolutely. I think all the
Nephilim.
I think all the pantheons are just fallen angels manifesting or naming themselves something different wherever they go. Don't forget there were 200 Watcher class angels involved in the initial, creating the Nephilim. And that means every part of the earth was covered in a pantheon of angels pretending to be gods among men, and coming up with all sorts of lies just to get people to focus on them rather than God. It was insane, and they had a lot of offspring, demigods, and half human, half weird looking reptile monsters everywhere. And it was a crazy time, a terrible time, pre and post flood. I reckon they were playing at it for a long time. I don't think it was just in the Intermediate age.
Well, there's certainly a lot of weirdness, and obviously as we went down the clown rabbit hole today, obviously that much is true. Yeah. But anyways, Paul, we really appreciate having you on. Obviously, we didn't even get to where we're talking about maybe some. I'd love to have you on again and talk about the idea that we're in maybe a post-millennial time, if we're in the short season of Satan. But yeah, this was awesome. I appreciate you coming on. Can you please tell people where they can find you at?
Sure. So I'm on YouTube predominantly. Just look up Understanding Conspiracy and you'll find me. I am also on Twitter as well and Instagram, but I don't really use them very often, to be honest. I'm on YouTube, so come over there and come check it out.
Awesome.
Yeah. Well, anyways, guys, this
is great. This is one of the funnest ones we've done, I think.
Yeah, you're a wealth of knowledge, brother, and I appreciate it. Anyways, guys, check out Paul, follow him on YouTube. Obviously, hopefully we connect again and we talk about lots more other crazy things. But you're going to be on Instagram soon, Paul. Just FYI, because I'm going to cut some reels and I'm going to tag you in it. So we'll try to build your following up on there.
Yeah, sure thing. Absolutely. Yeah. I do go on Instagram. I don't post them there as often as I should. That's on me. That's on me, But absolutely, I look forward to it, guys. It's been a great conversation. I've in terms of the clown theory, we have literally just scratched the surface here. Go to my channel. It gets way deeper. It gets terrifyingly deep. There's only so much you can say in an hour and a bit, But it's been good.
Yeah. All right. Well, anyways, you guys who are in the live chat, obviously we appreciate you guys hanging with us, and hopefully we treated your boy Paul well today, and you guys will see us around. Obviously, we're gonna put this on my channel, and I'm gonna put a nice slick edit, and hopefully we're gonna add lots of pictures and everything to describe everything we saw. But anyways, appreciate you guys. God bless you all. Love you.
Thanks, guys.
And I'll shoot you a message. I'm going to shoot you a message on Instagram, okay, Paul?